the betrayal, the perfect canvas. Aria Romano believed in three things: love, art, and second chances. At 24, she had found all three in the most unexpected place. In the arms of Marcus Blackwell, a man whose last name opened doors she never knew existed. Her studio apartment in the old district smelled of oil paint and turpentine. Canvas stretched across every wall, each one showing a different world born from her imagination. Some paintings showed city streets at midnight, rain-soaked and glowing with neon lights. Others captured the quiet beauty of forgotten places. Old bookshops, empty train stations, gardens where time seemed to stop. This was her kingdom, small, cramped, but completely hers. Aria stood before her latest piece, a large canvas showing two hands almost touching, separated by a thin line of light. The painting spoke of connection and distance, hope and longing. It was her best work yet, and it would be the centerpiece of her first major exhibition in 3 months. "You're doing it again," a warm voice said from the doorway. She turned to see Marcus leaning against the frame, his expensive suit somehow looking casual, his dark hair slightly messy from the wind. He was handsome in that effortless way wealthy people often were. Tall, confident, with eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Doing what?" Aria asked, setting down her brush. "Getting lost in your work." Marcus crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "I've been standing here for 5 minutes, and you didn't even notice." Aria leaned back against him, feeling safe in a way she'd never felt before. "Sorry. When I paint, the world disappears." "I know." He kissed the top of her head. "It's one of the things I love about you. You're real, Aria. In my world, everything is calculated, planned, bought. But you create magic from nothing." She turned in his arms to face him. "Your world is about to become my world. Are you sure you're ready for that?" 3 months ago, Marcus had proposed to her at a small cafe where they'd had their first date. No fancy restaurant, no photographers, no social media announcement. Just the two of them, coffee growing cold as he'd knelt beside her table with a simple but beautiful ring. "I'm ready for anything as long as you're with me," Marcus said, but something flickered in his eyes. Something Aria told herself was just nerves. Meeting the lions. The Blackwell mansion wasn't just a house. It was a statement. 3 stories of white stone and marble, surrounded by gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year. Aria felt small as Marcus's car pulled up the long driveway. "Relax," Marcus said, noticing her tension. "They're going to love you." But love was not the word for what waited inside. Victoria Blackwell, Marcus's mother, stood in the entrance hall like a queen greeting uninvited guests. She was beautiful in an icy way. Blonde hair pulled back severely, designer dress without a single wrinkle, and eyes that measured Aria's worth in seconds and found it lacking. "So you're the artist," Victoria said, her voice polite but cold. "Marcus has told us so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Aria replied, trying to smile. "Oh, I'm sure." Victoria's gaze swept over Aria's simple dress, the nicest one she owned, but clearly not expensive enough. "Come in. Dinner is almost ready." The dining room could have fit Aria's entire studio inside it twice. Crystal chandeliers, a table that sat 20, and portraits of Blackwell ancestors staring down with disapproval. Marcus's father, Richard, sat at the head of the table reading something on his tablet. He barely looked up when they entered. Marcus's sister, Celeste, was already seated, scrolling through her phone. She was 26, 2 years older than Marcus, and looked like a sharper, meaner version of their mother. "The artist finally arrives," Celeste said without looking up. "I was beginning to think you were just a story Marcus made up." "Celeste," Marcus warned. "What?" "I'm curious." Celeste finally looked at Aria, her smile not reaching her eyes. "So you paint. That's adorable. Like a hobby." "It's not a hobby," Aria said quietly. "It's my profession." "Of course it is." Victoria gestured to the walls. "In fact, we've displayed some of your work here. Marcus gave us several pieces as gifts. They add such a rustic charm to the space. Aria's stomach dropped. She recognized her paintings on the walls. 3 pieces she'd given Marcus early in their relationship. Small, personal works she'd never intended to sell or display publicly. Seeing them here in this cold mansion felt wrong. "I'm glad you like them," Aria managed to say. Dinner was painful. Every topic felt like a test Aria was failing. Victoria asked about her family, a single mother who worked 2 jobs. Not impressive. Richard asked about her education, art school, no business degree. Not practical. Celeste asked about her career plans with air quotes that made her meaning clear. Only Marcus defended her, but even he seemed different here. Smaller, less certain. Aria's having her first major exhibition in 3 months, Marcus said proudly. The Morrison Gallery is featuring her work. How nice, Victoria said in a tone that meant the opposite. And after you're married, will you continue with this painting? Of course, Aria said, confused by the question. Art is who I am. Victoria and Richard exchanged a look that Aria couldn't read. Well, Richard finally spoke, his voice deep and commanding. We'll see how things develop. Cracks in the canvas. The weeks that followed felt like slow poison. Marcus became busier, always working late at the Blackwell Company offices. Their dinner dates turned into quick coffee meetings. He stopped visiting her studio. When they talked on the phone, he sounded distracted, distant. I'm sorry, he'd say. It's just work. Big project coming up. It'll calm down soon. But it didn't calm down. It got worse. Aria started noticing her paintings in strange places. A piece she'd given Marcus appeared in a magazine article about the new Blackwell luxury apartment development. Another showed up on their company website. Her signature was visible, but there was no credit, no mention of her name. When she called Marcus about it, he was dismissive. It's free publicity for you, he said. People see your work, they get interested. Isn't that good? But they don't know it's mine, Aria protested. My name isn't anywhere. I'll talk to the marketing team. I'm sure it was just an oversight. But nothing changed. Then came the night that shattered everything. Aria arrived at the Blackwell offices to surprise Marcus with dinner, his favorite takeout from the Thai place they loved. His assistant wasn't at the desk, so Aria walked toward his office. The door was slightly open, and voices drifted out. You need to end this soon. Victoria's voice, sharp and commanding. The development launch is in 2 months. We need her work, not her. I know, Mother. Marcus sounded tired, defeated. I'm handling it. Are you? Because you look like a lovesick puppy every time someone mentions her name. This was Celeste. Remember the plan, little brother. Get the art, get the rights, then cut her loose. Aria's hand froze on the door handle. The bag of takeout slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. The voices inside stopped. The door opened fully. Marcus stood there, his face going pale when he saw her. Aria, he said. What are you doing here? She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Behind Marcus, she could see Victoria and Celeste at the conference table, surrounded by papers and computer screens. On the wall was a large presentation board showing the Blackwell luxury development, and every piece featured her art. How long? Aria finally whispered. How long has this been a lie? Let me explain. How long? Her voice cracked. Marcus's silence was the answer. Victoria stood up, smoothing her skirt. Ms. Romano, please don't make a scene. This is business. Surely you understand business. Business? Aria felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. You used me. You all used me. We gave you opportunities, Richard said, appearing in the doorway. Your little paintings are featured in a multi-million-dollar development. You should be grateful. Those paintings are mine. You had no right. Actually, Celeste held up a document, smiling. We have every right. When Marcus gave them to our mother as gifts, she became the legal owner. And as the owner, she can do whatever she wants with them. including using them for our company projects. Arya looked at Marcus. Tell me this isn't true. He couldn't meet her eyes. It started as a business decision, he said quietly. But then I met you and you were so different, so real. I thought I could do both, help the family business and actually care about you. But it got complicated. Complicated. Arya laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Was any of it real? The proposal? The I love yous? Was it all just to get more paintings from me? No. Marcus stepped toward her, but she backed away. My feelings for you are real, but I'm engaged to someone else. I have been the whole time. The world tilted. Arya grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Her name is Vivian Hartley, Victoria said, her voice almost bored. Suitable family, proper connections. The engagement was arranged years ago. Surely you didn't think my son would actually marry someone like you. Someone like you. The words hit like physical blows. So what was I? Arya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A convenient source of free art? A naive fool you could manipulate? You were supposed to be a short-term arrangement, Richard said. Marcus was supposed to get enough paintings to complete our development design, then end things gracefully. But he got attached. Sloppy. I'm offering you $50,000. Victoria pulled out a check, already written. For your silence and cooperation. Take it, sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away. Everyone wins. Arya looked at the check, then at Marcus, then back at the cold faces of his family. I'm not signing anything, she said. Those paintings are mine. I'm taking you to court. The temperature in the room dropped. That would be very unwise, Richard said, his voice carrying a threat. We have lawyers. Many lawyers. You have what? Your pride. I have the truth. Truth is expensive, Ms. Romano, Victoria said. And you can't afford it. Arya turned to Marcus one last time. I loved you. I actually loved you. His eyes were wet, but he said nothing. Did nothing. He just stood there, weak and cowardly, choosing his family over her. Arya walked out of the office, leaving the spilled takeout on the floor. She didn't run. She held her head high until she reached her car. Only then did she let the tears fall. She had no idea that the nightmare had only just begun. Ashes and ruins. The next morning, Arya woke to her phone ringing continuously. Calls from the Morrison Gallery, from other artists, from confused friends. Something was wrong. She checked social media. Her name was trending, but not for good reasons. Local artist accused of plagiarism. Arya Romano under investigation for stolen designs. Gallery cancels exhibition amid fraud claims. Article after article, all published overnight. All claiming that her distinctive style was actually stolen from an obscure European artist who died 10 years ago. The evidence was convincing, side-by-side comparisons, expert testimonies, even a supposed lawsuit filed by the dead artist's estate. All of it was lies, but it looked real. Arya called the Morrison Gallery. The owner, Mr. Morrison, was apologetic but firm. I'm sorry, Arya. We can't risk our reputation. The exhibition is cancelled. But it's not true. Those claims are fabricated. Maybe they are. But in this business, even the accusation is enough. Prove your innocence first, then we'll talk. She called her lawyer, a friend from art school who handled small legal matters. Arya, this is way beyond my expertise, he said. You need a serious law firm, but I'm going to be honest. Fighting the Blackwells? That could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Do you have that kind of money? She didn't. That afternoon, she went to her studio to work, to escape into her art like she always did when the world became too much. But when she arrived, fire trucks blocked the street. Her building was in flames. Arya ran toward it, but firefighters held her back. She watched as everything she'd created, every painting, every sketch, every dream, turned to ash and smoke. It started in your unit, a fire chief told her later. Electrical problem, looks like, could have been faulty wiring. But Arya knew. She knew. The next blow came from her bank. Her accounts were frozen, pending an investigation into suspicious activity. Someone had filed a complaint claiming she was involved in art fraud and money laundering. Within 48 hours, Arya lost her exhibition, her artwork, her reputation, and her financial security. She had nothing. Marcus's lawyer called the next day. My client is willing to drop all legal action if you agree never to speak about the Blackwell family publicly and never claim ownership of any artwork currently in their possession. Refuse, and we'll bury you in lawsuits for the rest of your life. Arya sat in her mother's tiny apartment. She'd lost her own studio lease and stared at the wall. She was beaten, broken. They had won. What do I do, Mom? She asked. Her mother, a woman who'd survived poverty, an abusive marriage, and raising a child alone, took her daughter's hands. You survive, she said. You leave this place, you start over, and you survive. But Arya, you remember everything they did. Because someday, when you're strong enough, you make them pay. 3 days later, Arya Romano left the city with one suitcase, her mother's savings, and a heart full of burning rage. The betrayal was complete. But the story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The rising phoenix. A new beginning in Paris. 5 years later, the woman who stepped off the plane in her former city was not the same broken girl who had left. She moved with confidence, dressed in clothes that whispered wealth rather than screamed it, and her eyes held a sharpness that came from hard-won wisdom. Arya Romano was dead. In her place stood Elena Winters. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been built through tears, determination, and the refusal to let the Blackwells win. Paris had been her refuge. With her mother's savings and a desperate need to disappear, Arya had found a tiny apartment in the Marais district. For the first month, she'd barely left her room. Depression wrapped around her like chains. Every time she picked up a paintbrush, she saw Marcus's face. Every canvas reminded her of what they'd stolen. But her mother hadn't raised a quitter. Slowly, painfully, Arya began to create again. But she didn't sign her name to anything. She sold pieces anonymously through small galleries, using different styles to avoid recognition. The money was enough to survive, barely. Then she met Sebastian Laurent. The mentor appears. Sebastian was 70 years old, with silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and a reputation as one of the most respected art dealers in Europe. He discovered Arya's work in a small left bank gallery, a haunting piece showing a phoenix rising from ashes, its wings made of shattered mirror fragments. He tracked her down to her apartment 3 days later. "You have talent," he said in accented English, standing in her doorway uninvited. "But talent is common. What you have is rage. I can see it in every brushstroke. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Arya said, trying to close the door. Sebastian's cane blocked it. "Yes, you do. Someone hurt you, destroyed you, and now you're hiding like a wounded animal. But wounded animals have 2 choices, die or become dangerous." Something in his words cracked through Arya's defenses. She let him in. Over coffee that grew cold as they talked, Arya told him everything. The betrayal, the stolen art, the destroyed reputation, the Blackwell family. She expected judgment or pity. Instead, Sebastian smiled. "Good," he said. "Now we have something to work with." Learning the game. Sebastian didn't just teach Arya about art. He taught her about power. The art world is not about who creates the best work, he explained as they walked through the Musée d'Orsay. It's about who controls the narrative. The Blackwells understood this. They took your art and your story, and they rewrote both. Now you must learn to do the same. Over the next 4 years, Arya became Sebastian's protégé. She learned the business of art, how to read people, how to negotiate, how to make wealthy collectors believe they needed something they'd never wanted. She learned which galleries mattered and which critics could make or break an artist with a single review. She also learned patience. "Revenge is a dish best served cold," Sebastian would say. "But it must also be served perfectly." One mistake and your enemies will destroy you again. This time you must be smarter, stronger, and completely in control. Arya worked in Sebastian's gallery in Paris, then in his second location in Milan. She met collectors, artists, and dealers from around the world. She built relationships carefully, strategically. Every connection was a piece on a chessboard, and she watched the Blackwells from afar. The internet made it easy to follow their lives. Marcus married Vivian Hartley in a ceremony that cost more than most people's houses. Celeste took over as head of marketing for Blackwell Company. Victoria and Richard continued ruling their empire with iron fists. But the empire had cracks. A luxury development in Florida failed spectacularly, losing millions. Several high-profile investors pulled out of Blackwell projects after construction delays. There were whispers of financial trouble, though nothing confirmed. The development featuring Aria's stolen art, the one that had started everything, had its own problems. Buyers complained about design flaws. Some units remained unsold. The critics who'd once praised its artistic vision now called it derivative and soulless. Arya read every article, memorized every detail. She was studying her enemy, learning their weaknesses, and she was planning the return. When Sebastian died peacefully in his sleep at 74, he left Arya something unexpected. Enough money to open her own gallery and a letter. "My dear Elena, you came to me broken, and I watched you rebuild yourself into something magnificent. But there's one final lesson I never taught you: the difference between justice and revenge. Revenge is about making others suffer as you suffered. Justice is about restoring balance to the world. As you pursue the Blackwells, remember which one you truly seek. The wrong choice will destroy you as surely as they once did. You are ready now. Go home. Finish what they started. With love and pride, Sebastian." Arya read the letter 100 times. She didn't fully understand it yet, but she would. Eventually. 6 months later, Elena Winters opened an exclusive art gallery in the most prestigious district of her former city, less than 2 miles from Blackwell Company headquarters. The opening was invitation only. Critics, collectors, and socialites attended, curious about this mysterious woman who'd appeared from nowhere with impeccable European credentials and unlimited funding. "Who is she?" people whispered. "Where did she come from? Have you seen her taste? Absolutely exquisite." The gallery featured emerging artists, pieces from established masters, and a small collection marked private, not for sale. These were Aria's own works, painted over the past 5 years, each one a coded message about betrayal and resurrection. Only someone who knew her story would understand them. But no one knew her story. Not anymore. The trap begins to close. 3 weeks after the gallery opened, Celeste Blackwell walked through the door. Arya was in her office when her assistant, James, knocked. "Ms. Winters? There's a Celeste Blackwell here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says she's very interested in potentially featuring gallery pieces in her company's new development project." Arya's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. The moment she'd planned for, dreamed about, rehearsed 1,000 times. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "Then show her in." She stood at her office window, looking out at the city. The girl who'd left 5 years ago would have been terrified right now. That girl had been soft, trusting, naive. Elena Winters was none of those things. When Celeste entered, Arya turned slowly. Her hair was different now, darker, shorter, professionally styled. She wore designer glasses she didn't need. Her makeup was subtle but transformative. She'd even trained herself to speak with a slight European accent, a blend of French and Italian that came from her years abroad. Celeste looked right at her and saw a stranger. "Ms. Winters." Celeste extended a hand, her smile practiced and fake. "Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. I've heard so many wonderful things about your gallery. Please call me Elena." Arya shook her hand, fighting the urge to squeeze too hard. "I'm always happy to meet with potential clients, especially from such a prestigious company as Blackwell." They sat in leather chairs by the window. Arya poured tea from a silver service, playing the role of sophisticated gallery owner perfectly. "I'll be direct," Celeste said. "Blackwell Company is launching a new luxury development next year. We want it to have an artistic focus, really emphasize culture and sophistication. We're looking for exclusive pieces to feature throughout the property." "I see," Arya said. "And you came to me specifically?" "Your reputation precedes you. The art world is buzzing about Elena Winters, this mysterious woman with such impeccable taste." Celeste leaned forward. "Between you and me, we've tried working with local artists before. It was disappointing. They lack professionalism. They get emotional about their work. It's exhausting." Arya thought about Marcus, about the paintings stolen from her studio, about her entire life burning while the Blackwells watched. "How unfortunate," she said smoothly. "Art should be a business transaction, not an emotional entanglement." "Exactly." Celeste's eyes lit up. "You understand. Most artists don't." They talked for an hour. Arya asked strategic questions, learning everything about the new development, the budget, the timeline. Celeste, thinking she'd found a sophisticated ally, revealed far more than she should have. The Blackwell Company was struggling more than the public knew. The new development was critical to their financial recovery. They needed it to succeed, needed positive publicity, needed investors to see them as innovative and culturally relevant again. They were desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. "I might be able to help," Arya said as Celeste prepared to leave, "but I'd need to see the property, meet with your full team, understand the complete vision." "Of course, I'll arrange a meeting with my family. My brother Marcus handles the financial side, and my parents oversee everything." Arya's blood ran cold at Marcus's name, but her face remained perfectly composed. "Wonderful," she said. "I look forward to it." After Celeste left, Arya sat alone in her office for a long time. The first move was complete. The Blackwells had walked into her web willingly, eagerly, seeing her as an opportunity rather than a threat. James knocked again. "Ms. Winters? Are you all right?" "I'm perfect," Arya said, and for the first time in 5 years, she smiled genuinely. "Absolutely perfect. Ghosts of the past." The formal meeting with Blackwell Company was scheduled for the following week. Arya spent that time preparing like a general planning a battle. She hired a private investigator to dig deeper into the Blackwell family's current situation. What he found was illuminating. Marcus's marriage to Vivian was a disaster. They appeared together at public events, smiling for cameras, but they lived in separate wings of their mansion. Vivian had her own life, her own lovers, discreet but known to the right people. Marcus buried himself in work, rarely socializing. He looked tired in recent photos, older than his 30 years. There were rumors he'd been seeing a therapist, that he'd become withdrawn and difficult to work with. Good, Arya thought. Let him suffer. Celeste was drowning in debt despite her family's wealth. She spent money faster than she earned it, maintaining a lifestyle of designer everything. There were whispers that she'd borrowed money from questionable sources. Victoria and Richard's marriage was cold but functional. They presented a united front publicly, but the investigator found evidence of separate social lives, separate bank accounts, separate everything. They were business partners who happened to share a name. The company itself was indeed in trouble. Bad investments, failed developments, and a reputation for cutting corners had caught up with them. They needed this new luxury project to succeed. Without it, they might lose everything. The night before the meeting, Arya couldn't sleep. She stood in her apartment. Spacious now, modern, nothing like the tiny studio she'd once called home, and looked at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. 5 years ago, she'd been destroyed. Now she was the one with the power. But Sebastian's letter haunted her. Justice or revenge? Was there a difference? The Blackwells had stolen from her, lied to her, destroyed her life without remorse. They deserved to pay, didn't they? Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Be careful tomorrow, baby. Don't lose yourself in this." Arya replied, "I won't. I'm just getting back what they took." But as she tried to sleep, She wondered if that was really true. Was this about recovering her stolen art and reputation? Or was it about making them hurt the way they'd hurt her? Maybe it was both. Maybe that was okay. Face to face with the past. The Blackwell Company offices hadn't changed. Same marble lobby, same expensive art on the walls. None of it hers anymore. They'd sold off her pieces quietly after the scandal. Same atmosphere of cold corporate power. Arya walked in wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than her entire wardrobe had 5 years ago. Her assistant James accompanied her, carrying a tablet and portfolio. She'd planned everything down to the minute. The receptionist greeted her warmly. "Ms. Winters? They're expecting you in the executive conference room. 9th floor." The elevator ride felt eternal. Arya's heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She'd practiced this moment, prepared for every possibility. The doors opened, and there they were. Victoria saw her first, standing as Arya entered. Older now, more lines around her eyes, but still radiating that Ice Queen authority. "Ms. Winters, welcome. We're so pleased you could join us." Richard barely looked up from his phone. Age had softened him slightly. More gray hair, less imposing, but his dismissive attitude remained unchanged. Celeste beamed like they were old friends.
"Elena."
"I was just telling everyone about your gallery. Absolutely stunning." And then Arya saw Marcus. He stood by the window, his back to the room, talking quietly on his phone. When he turned around, their eyes met. For a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, something flickered in his expression. Recognition?
Impossible.
She looked completely different. But there was something in his eyes. A question. A confusion. Then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Marcus," Victoria said. "This is Elena Winters, the gallery owner Celeste told us about." Marcus crossed the room and extended his hand. "Ms. Winters, a pleasure." Arya took his hand. His grip was firm, warm. The same hands that had held her, that had promised forever, that had let her be destroyed. "Mr. Blackwell," she said in her practiced accent, "I've heard so much about your family's company." Up close, she could see the changes 5 years had brought. Fine lines around his eyes, shadows beneath them that spoke of sleepless nights. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It probably never had, and she'd just been too blind to see it. They sat around the conference table. Victoria took the lead, presenting their vision for the new development with practiced efficiency. It would be called the Meridian, luxury condos with an artistic theme, targeting wealthy professionals who appreciated culture. "We want each unit to feel like a curated gallery space," Victoria explained. "Not just hung pictures, but integrated art as part of the architecture and design." Arya listened, asked intelligent questions, took notes. She played her role perfectly. But inside, she was cataloging everything, their body language, their dynamics, their weak points. Marcus watched her throughout the presentation. She could feel his eyes on her, that same intensity she remembered from 5 years ago. Several times she caught him staring, his expression troubled. "He knows," a small voice whispered in her mind. Somehow, on some level, he knows. But he said nothing. "The timeline is aggressive," Richard finally spoke. "We need to break ground in 6 months. That means securing artists, commissioning pieces, and finalizing designs within 3 months. Can you handle that, Ms. Winters?" It was a test. They were pushing to see if she'd crack under pressure. Arya smiled. "Mr. Blackwell, I've coordinated exhibitions across 4 countries simultaneously. 3 months is more than enough time, assuming we have clear communication and decisive leadership." The subtle insult, questioning their leadership, made Richard's eyes narrow. But Victoria actually smiled, appreciating the boldness. "I like you," Victoria said. "You're not intimidated easily." If only you knew, Arya thought. They discussed logistics, budgets, and expectations for another hour. Arya made careful notes, committed everything to memory. She needed to understand their plans completely before she could dismantle them. As the meeting ended, Marcus stood. "Ms. Winters, could I have a moment?" I'd like to discuss the financial aspects privately, if you don't mind. Celeste and Victoria exchanged glances. Richard checked his watch, already mentally moving to his next meeting. Of course, Arya said, her pulse quickening. Alone with Marcus. This wasn't part of her plan. They moved to a smaller conference room down the hall. Marcus closed the door, and suddenly the space felt very small. I'll be direct, he said, leaning against the table. Have we met before? Arya's blood froze, but her face remained calm. I don't believe so. I've been living in Europe for the past several years. This is my first major project in this city. It's strange, Marcus continued, studying her face. You seem familiar. Your eyes. Something about them. I have a common face, Arya said lightly. It happens.
No.
His voice was soft, almost sad. Your face is not common at all. The compliment caught her off guard. For a second, she was 24 again, listening to Marcus tell her she was beautiful, believing every word. She crushed that feeling immediately. Mr. Blackwell, was there something specific about the financial arrangements you wanted to discuss? The spell broke. Marcus straightened, becoming professional again. Yes, of course. I just wanted to make sure you understand. This project is critical to our company. We can't afford mistakes or delays. If you commit to this, we need absolute reliability.